Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel thwarts a major terrorist attack just in time. A new display gives us rare insight into Israeli history, and ILTV remembers the Yom Kippur War with a very special guest. I'm Natasha Kirchuk here with the latest news in Israel. Israeli security just barely thwarted a number of terrorist attacks in Jerusalem on Tuesday after arresting a Hamas operative who was planning to carry out the violence on behalf of the terror group. 22-year-old Mohammed Jolani was supposed to carry out a suicide bombing on a bus in the city's Pisgat Ze'ev neighborhood after discussing a series of potential attack ideas with Hamas. Jolani apparently contacted Gaza residents affiliated with Hamas through Facebook to offer a hand in attacking Israel. He was then given money to obtain the raw materials necessary to manufacture explosives and began doing so until he was caught by his parents. According to authorities, this was not the first time Jolani had planned to carry out a terrorist attack. He'd apparently considered carrying out a stabbing attack in Jerusalem just a year before, but changed plans at the last minute out of fear that authorities would demolish his parents' home. Israeli security forces have arrested 20 Palestinians over the course of the Yom Kippur holiday in a series of raids throughout the West Bank and East Jerusalem. The suspects were allegedly involved in violent incidents ranging from gunfire exchanges with IDF forces to rock throwing to handling funds for Hamas. Israeli forces have been on high alert throughout the Jewish high holiday season out of fear that there will be a rise in violent attacks against Israel. Israel's Home Front Command was initially created to confront any significant threats posed to the civilian population. But now its responsibilities are being extended to meet rising needs in defense of the Jewish state. The regional unit came to life in 1992 when the Israeli civilian population experienced its greatest level of attacks during the First Gulf War, since the country's War of Independence in 1948. The unit's responsibilities have already been expanded from dealing with missile strikes in civilian zones to helping out with local tragedies, like extracting workers that were trapped in a Tel Aviv parking lot collapse last month. Now, these soldiers are going to be tasked with rescuing military personnel from similar incidents within enemy territory. Recruits are already undergoing training in newly created units commanded by lower-ranking officers, who've been given the increased authority to call the shots. The teams are made up of 70% male soldiers and 30% female soldiers, whom all must become proficient in infantry combat, biological warfare, and search and rescue operations. Their missions will cover the West Bank for most of the year, but also include security missions along Israel's borders with Egypt and Jordan. In case of a full-scale conflict, the unit's numbers will be inflated to include reservists called in from Israel's civilian population. The ability of these independent platoons to fully exercise command and control on their own will now enable the Homefront Command to reach rocket strike zones around the entire country more quickly and efficiently in time of need. Even though it's now been 71 years since the end of the Holocaust, Europe is still struggling to come to grips with anti-Jewish sentiments and dispel the remains of Nazi ideology. Now that fight is becoming more necessary than ever with a recent surge of anti-Semitic rhetoric. In France, the leader of a regional branch of the far-right National Front Party was the brunt of heavy criticism this week. Christophe Boudot apologized for being ill-informed when he said a memorial museum for children murdered in the Holocaust should lose state subsidies because it was too politicized and a symbol of repentance that France didn't owe. The same day in Stockholm, the Sweden Democrats Party was accused by the Prime Minister of having Nazi and racist elements. That was after an email by the party's deputy vice chair surfaced, including a racist joke about Jews and other minorities. The faction created other backlash last week after its spokesperson compared Jews to sheep, and another lawmaker introduced a bill accusing a Jewish family of controlling the media. Meanwhile, in Germany, far-right politicians are reviving decades-old terminology for use against the influx of migrants. Critics say many of the words, such as the one for ethnic, embody the Nazi concept of the German master race. Other loaded vocabulary being used, inferring extreme nationalism and racism, hasn't been heard since the Third Reich advanced its ideology to exterminate anyone it considered subhuman. One German political analyst says he believes his nation has become less critical of its Nazi past in recent years, and now feels free to use such controversial terms that would have been forbidden just 2 decades ago. Yet glorification of Nazism is a crime in Germany, and there's a growing cry for the legal authorities to take action. The Israeli Prime Minister has been careful not to show any preference towards either candidate when it comes to the American presidential elections. But as Israel prepares for the final months of the Obama administration, that soon may change. Some are concerned that the American government may pressure the current Israeli coalition to support a certain candidate. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz sat down with Times of Israel editor-in-chief David Horowitz to find out if that concern is legitimate.
Yeah, I'm not sure that he did indicate that. I think he said ahead of the closed-door part of his meeting with Netanyahu, he wanted to hear from Netanyahu how the two-state solution is to be kept alive. I didn't hear him saying, hey, I'm going to make one last push or even hint. I've heard his people not quite ruling it out. And you're right, there's precedent. There was the very last gasp effort from Clinton, for example, who at least set out parameters. There's lots of things that Obama could do that are short of some kind of heavy-handed, I would say, bridge-burning exercise where, people have speculated he might back something at the UN that's really problematic for Israel. He might, but I also think there are a lot of far less dramatic things that he might choose to do. He might make a big speech. He might release a version of the understandings that were reached when his secretary, John Kerry, was trying to broker a deal in 2013 to 2014. I don't know. I tend to think, and time will tell, I don't think he's going to do something that will leave either side saying, wow, at the very last he let us down. I don't think he's going to want to do that. And he had 8 years, and he made it a priority, and he didn't get anywhere. So why he would think, or he didn't get anywhere to his satisfaction, why would he think that in his final weeks he could achieve something? I mean, put down a marker maybe, but achieve something, hard to believe. And therefore, by definition, when you're going to alienate these two sides that you tried to be an honest broker with, I find it hard to believe he'll do something that either side would deem offensive.
One of the things that Netanyahu said during his speech in the United Nations, perhaps the most dramatic moment, I suppose, was when he issued an invitation to Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, to come to Israel and to speak at the Israeli Knesset. Do you think it was a sincere offer that he thought could actually succeed? Of course, Abbas has rejected it.
Look, you make an offer like that, you have to take into account that it might be accepted. Does he think that Abbas is likely to do it? I can't imagine so, because I think he knows enough about how the world works in the Palestinian territories where such an act might be deemed, in Abbas's assessment, to be normalization too far. So he may anticipate that it's very unlikely that Abbas would come. But hey, if Abbas was to take him up on it, he'd have been in trouble if he hadn't meant it sincerely. You've had Palestinian Authority delegations meeting in the Knesset. I've been I think there's maybe only 1 or 2 meetings like that, but I've been in one of those rooms, and the Palestinian flag was up there, across from the Israeli flag, behind the people who are hosting the Israeli delegation and the Palestinian delegation. It's not completely beyond all comprehension or contemplation that Abbas could take him up on it. And let's, again, this is not the 1970s, and this is not Egypt, and there's a great many differences. But before President Sadat of Egypt came to the Knesset in 1977, Israeli public opinion was hostile to the notion of relinquishing territory that we captured in the Six-Day War for the theory of a peace agreement with Egypt. And then this man came to the Knesset, this man who had overseen a very bitter war against Israel just 4 years earlier, and he said, let's make peace. Let's put the wars between us behind us. And there was a revolution in Israeli public opinion. And we had a right-wing, Holocaust-scarred, skeptical prime minister named Menachem Begin, but of course he engaged with Sadat. So sometimes political drama, acts of resonance can change a narrative and change a climate. I don't think there's a parallel here. I don't think that Abbas is about to take him up on it. But in a way, that's the tragedy. Because if Abbas was the kind of leader who would say, you know what, I'm going to do it. I don't particularly like this prime minister. I don't like his policies. I don't think he's good for my people. All the problems that he would doubtless want to recite. But I'm going to go there and I'm going to say to the people of Israel, via their legislators, in their parliament, my people want peace. And we're prepared to reach terms that both sides can live with. What a wonderful thing that would be. The tragedy, the interesting thing is the extension of the invitation. The tragedy is that in the climate that we have and with the personalities that we have, nobody is going to make that resonant, climate-changing, dramatic gesture.
As per usual, security forces in Israel remained on high alert this week as Jews around the country observed the Yom Kippur Day of Atonement, which is the holiest day on the Hebrew calendar. The Israeli army has been vigilant since the 1973 Yom Kippur War, when Israel was surprised with a major attack by a coalition of Arab armies. And now the country's collective memory may become even sharper, since many never-before-seen photographs of the conflict have just been released. The photos are among a million other images now being transferred to Israel's National Library in Jerusalem by Holocaust survivor Dan Hadani. He assembled his massive archive by snapping pictures during his years after he came to Israel and became a career soldier. He continued his craft by founding the Israeli press and photo agency that supplied material to media outlets. The Yom Kippur War collection includes pictures of then Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Dayan, along with other senior Israeli military leaders and soldiers at the Syrian battlefront in the Golan Heights, as well as in Egypt at the Suez Canal. The rich collection of powerful images documents much of the country's modern history, spanning the 1960s to the end of the last century. Hadani's trove is a welcome addition at the National Library, which has until now covered mostly the British Mandate era and before. It looks like very soon we'll all be able to access the engrossing scenes captured by Hadani on the library's website, where they'll be preserved forever. This week, Israel marks 43 years since one of the deadliest wars in this nation's history, the Yom Kippur War. The Israeli military wasn't ready, and the IDF was ambushed in a surprising attack by several Arab countries, both in the north and the south. Today, we're honored to host in our studios a legendary commander of the 77th Armored Battalion, who received the highest Israeli military decoration, the Medal of Valor, retired Brigadier General Avigdal Kalani. Thanks so much for coming in.
You're welcome.
So to begin, when this war took place, the Israeli defense system was in total shock. How did you deal with this existential crisis, this threat on the spot?
I tell you, the famous picture from '67 war was hundreds shoes on the dune. They ran away from us, they threw away the rifles, and they ran away to the beach. And this picture, this may be the reason of the '73 war, because our leaders they had to start mobilization at that time, and they didn't do it because of this picture. They thought we strong enough. And what after the war, it was a big shock in our country, because first they start the war, and it was their initiative. Another thing, we lost 2,656 soldiers and more than 7,000 people badly wounded. And it was a shock all over the country. And we asked so many questions. We had many new cemeteries in the country. We didn't know who were located in this war. Nobody had a contract with his family far away, but it was a big success. But the feeling on the street, it's like a big cemetery, and we ask so many questions. This is the reason, is a shock. And I believe if the war was in '74 or '75, the result was worse.
Now, you specifically were faced with a battle unlike any other, but you managed to win. How did this happen?
After '67, I was a year in the hospital. Until now, 17 operations. I'm formerly I'm a disabled person, and I've decided to go back to the tank. And we fought in the Golan Heights. I was battalion commander, like you mentioned. And the ratio between them and us was 1 Israeli tank against 10 Syrian tanks. And we fought again and again and again, and I lost most of my soldiers. Even I lost my brother during the wars, and my wife, she lost the second brother of her during the wars. For me, it was like a big exam if I can, carry with me what I have post-trauma from '67, and I can be a leader and commander during the hard combat with this kind of ratio. The war was terrible, terrible. But what's important is we stopped 35 kilometers from Damascus, and the threat was in the capital of Syria. And this is the result of this war. But the feeling inside is why? What has happened to us? The shoes and the dune. This changed our mind, and this is the reason we didn't start mobilization.
Now, like you said before, you had some very personal losses in this war, your brother, and from what I understand, also your nephew. And you didn't know about any of this until you had finished your last battle.
No, I didn't know, because my deputy was badly wounded, and I was commander near the Damascus. I had another brother in my battalion, and I didn't know that they sent him back to the parents' house. And I didn't know that. Even when we finished the war, they called me and said, my commander, Janusz Bengal, he said, go home. I said, why? He said, your brother, that he got married 10 days before, he was in the middle of honeymoon. His name was Emmanuel. He joined me when he joined to the Armor Corps to be tank commander, and he was killed. And I asked about my second brother, that he's my battalion. And I didn't know that he's already 7 days at home. And after that, of course, they gave me the information about the brother of my wife and everything. It's hard, it's very hard. And after a month, 2 months, I had to go back home and to serve close to the area, not in the Syria anymore, because I saw what happened to my family. It's almost I lost them, because they were that time. It was so hard. It was hard to leave my battalion, because my people, they fought for me, because I ordered them to go this way and this way.
Yeah, it's like you have two families.
Yeah. And to make the decision to go back home, for me, it was really a trauma.
Now, as a commander of the 77th Armored Battalion, you fought in the Golan Heights, which is, obviously a highly contested area to today. And nowadays, you arrange special tours for young people in that area. Can you tell us what drew you to do that? Why do you do that?
I tell you, I'm worried about the future of our country. I'm worried about the motivation of the youth. I'm asking myself what I can do for the future of the country. I was in the Knesset member, I was in the government, I was Minister of Public Security. But now I thought about which kind of motivation I can bring from myself to the young generation. And there are two, 3 ways. One way, this is what we are talking about, to bring the youth to the Golan Heights for one day, more than 1,000 buses, 40,000 kids, and to describe what happened in the Golan Heights, not just in the Valley of the Tears where I fought, all over. And every day they can see a live training, fire in the Golan Heights, and a big exhibition of the army in the Golan Heights. And when they arrive in the morning, 9 o'clock, and they leave at night, they understood what happened there. And this is, it's work on the motivation to join the army in the day when they need.
Absolutely, it gives you hope too, you know?
Yeah. I give them the flag of the country,
yeah.
and I tell them, hold the flag. If you open your hand, the flag will fall down, and we will lose the country. Do you swear now? And they said, yes. This is enough.
Now, you know, this area, the Golan Heights, is very problematic, you know, throughout the world. Many question what the future is of this area within relation to Israel. Is Israel going to have to give up on this area? In your opinion, how do you view the future?
When I was Knesset member in '94, I fought against Mr. Rabin because he was ready to withdraw from Golan Heights. Even I was in the Labour Party, in his party.
Right.
And I've decided to create new party on the Third Way. This is the name. And I was the leader of the Third Way, and I became Minister of Public Security. Anyway, it was that time a big mistake, and now you can see what's going on in Syria. Can you imagine that we stopped near the Jordan River, and those people were fighting between them? Even now, they're shooting to our area because they cannot control the fire. I believe that we will stay there forever. We have more than 33 villages, kibbutzim, and one town in the Golan Heights. Those people, it's an agriculture area, beautiful area. And I believe even by law, it's part of Israel now. And I believe that most of the people now in our country agree with the idea that we are going to stay there forever. And I'm ready to fight for that.
I don't know if we can afford to have you go back into another war at this point, but kol hakavod lecha. You know, everybody here is so excited to have you come into the studios. You're a true hero and representative of Israel, and I hope we'll have you back again soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The Prime Minister of Ukraine has just made a major announcement that could change the course of history education in the Eastern European country. Ukraine is set to build its first ever Holocaust Memorial Center at the site of one of the worst atrocities to take place in the country during World War II. It's been 75 years since German soldiers and their collaborators gunned down more than 33,000 unarmed Jewish men, women, and children on the outskirts of Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital. The heinous killing spree took place between the 29th and 30th of September 1941 at a ravine whose name became synonymous with evil, Babi Yar. The massacre marked the start of the Holocaust in Ukraine, where the pre-war Jewish population of about 1.5 million was virtually wiped out. Ukrainian President Poroshenko says the goal of the current memorial is to honor the memory of all those who were killed and to create awareness of the mass murder of Jews.
Надзвичайно важливо, щоб все людство пам'ятало про корені, про кроваві факти Холокосту, і щоб ця пам'ять слугувала застереженням і нашим сучасним, і майбутнім поколінням про небезпеку ненависті, фанатизму, расизму і нетерпимості.
Ukraine gained independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. During its rule, the communist regime never allowed any kind of commemoration of the victims of Babi Yar. Russian expatriate and Israeli politician Natan Sharansky attended the press conference and shared his memories of that time.
В 70-е годы и 80-е я и многие мои друзья 29 сентября проводили в превентивном заключении по несколько часов, чтобы не дать нам в этот день приехать на Баби Яр. Таковы были попытки советской власти стереть это из памяти.
At long last, there will finally be a memorial in tribute to the victims of Babi Yar, set to open in 2021. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. The weekend is finally here, so today's word is Sof Shavua, which means weekend in Hebrew. That's at least a formal term, but if you really want to sound like an Israeli, you should refer to everyone's favorite part of the week as Sofash. Here in Israel, the Sofash isn't exactly the same as in the Western world. Israelis have Fridays and Saturdays off instead of Saturdays and Sundays. Wondering why? It's all because of Shabbat, the Jewish day of rest, which takes place on Saturdays. So while most stores are closed in the United States on Sunday, if you come and visit the Holy Land, you can expect everything to be shuttered on Saturdays. Now, don't worry, the Sofash here is still just as fun, and if you don't believe me, just check out the nightlife in Tel Aviv. Over here, they say life begins on a Thursday night. So even though the Sofash takes place on different days in Israel, I think we can all come to the universal agreement that 2 days of weekend still isn't enough time off. On that note, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast for this Sofash.
The ILTV weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta.
Friday is expected to be sunny with a high of 88 degrees, so get out your sunscreen. Saturday should be just as sunny, but the temperature will drop down to 82. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.81 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at ILTV.tv, and don't forget to check out our next update at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.